Chapter 9 focuses on team development. This quote is a nice illustration of the process in which you go from a group of collective individuals to an actual team, so moving from the I's to the we's. I put a video on NASCAR pit crews in there for this week to illustrate, how important team cohesion is, particularly in that sport and that group of people. Groups have a clear leader and 2 or more members who perform independent jobs with individual accountability, evaluation, and rewards. In groups, objectives are often set by the leader and the organization, so it's like a collective of individuals. In comparison, teams are groups whose members share leadership and whose members also perform interdependent jobs, meaning they rely on each other, with individual and group accountability, evaluation, and rewards. Group performance is often based on these 4 factors. Context, which refers to the environment, again, the internal and external components, things like mission, strategy, culture, structure, systems, and processes. Structure, the size and type of the organization. Is it a tall structure, a flat structure? The leadership and objectives. Process, which are roles, norms, cohesiveness, status, decision-making, and conflict resolution. And finally, the stages of group development, which I'll go into more detail on later. In terms of the types of groups, you have formal versus informal. So formal groups are often created by the organization, whereas informal groups are spontaneous. So like this NASCAR pit crew is created by that specific ownership group and assigned to a certain driver. In terms of functional groups, they perform one type of work, whereas cross-functional groups are when members come from different functional areas, like when projects are organized and you need a person from marketing, you need a person from accounting, you need a person maybe from public relations, so they're from different functional areas within the organization. Command groups consist of managers and their employees. People are hired to be part of a command group. Command groups are often distinguished by department membership. Task groups are composed of employees selected to work on a specific objective. Command groups tend to be functional, while task groups are often cross-functional. Everyone in an organization belongs to a command group, but employees may work for an organization for many years without ever being a member of a cross-functional task group. Generally, the higher the level of management, the more variety and more time spent in task groups and their meetings. There are 3 types of group roles. Task roles focus on getting employees to complete job functions. Maintenance roles are when employees say or do things that shape and maintain the group objective. So they're relationship oriented. You're trying to get people to connect with people to get them to finish their job. And finally, self-interest roles occur when employees say or do things that help the individual but hurt the group. There are a number of different factors that influence group cohesion. Strong commitment to goals and objectives often leads to higher cohesion. If there's a smaller group versus a larger group, in smaller groups there's a tendency to have higher cohesion. Homogeneity among groups, meaning that you have more similar members, also leads to higher cohesion, though diverse groups often outperform homogeneous groups, as we talked about in that diversity chapter. Other factors that lead to group cohesion are participation, so the more equal participation opportunities people have, the greater the cohesion. External competition, oftentimes the team pulls together so people are competing with other groups, not necessarily within their own group. And then finally, success breeds cohesion. So teams that win, organizations that do well, oftentimes and these groups have higher levels of cohesion. So people want to be on a winning team or a winning group. In terms of the relationship between cohesion and performance, groups with the highest level of productivity were highly cohesive and accepted management's directives. Groups with the lowest levels of productivity were also highly cohesive, but they rejected the management's directives. And then finally, groups with intermediate levels of productivity were often low cohesive groups, regardless of whether or not they accepted management's directives. The widest variance of individual group members' performance was among the groups with lower cohesiveness. They tended to be more tolerant of nonconformity with group norms. There are 5 stages of group development, starting with the orientation stage, otherwise known as the forming stage, where there's high commitment but low competence. Leadership style should be autocratic because you often need to clarify roles and objectives. The second stage, dissatisfaction, also known as the storming stage, where there's low commitment, some competence. Leadership should be consultative, focusing on getting high task and high maintenance, so getting people to work on the task, but also establishing the connection with those individuals so you can get buy-in from the members. Third stage, resolution, often called the norming stage, where the commitment's variable, but there's high competence, so people are good at their job, they know what to do. They develop more competence, become more satisfied, they learn to work together. And then the fourth stage, production, is where the group members are performing at a high level, there's high commitment, high competence, they're productive, they're starting to function as a team. The leadership style is an empowerment style where you have to focus on, you don't have to focus as frequently on the task and maintenance part because they are highly committed and highly competent. And then finally, the termination stage, otherwise known as the adjourning stage, is when the task ends, you need some closure, and then so you can move on. In terms of handling problem members, effective groups often have participation from all members. So silent ones are people who are withdrawn, may not contribute, so you may have to go around and just call on them and provide them with an opportunity to give you some feedback. Talkers are essentially the exact opposite. They try to dominate the conversation. So you may want to try to move the conversation away from them, getting other people involved, and then go back to them later on. And then finally, the wanderers are the distractors of the group. So they crack jokes, they try to get the group off topic. You may have to just cut them off, move on to the next person before they take you down the wrong path. Arguers are people who love to have an argument just for the sake of having one, so you may also have to cut them off, try to diffuse the situation, try not to argue with them because that's their whole purpose. Those who are bored may want to give them some tasks to accomplish in the group, like having them take notes, write down things, so they have something to do. Social loafers are people who are there just for the free ride. They don't want to do their share of the work, so you may want to touch base with them, confront them, have other, like we're using peer reviews in class, that's to try to get away from social loafing, so people review each other, provide that feedback, get it to the boss. So here we got Hanley Ramirez. We could call him a social loafer. The Red Sox are trying to switch him to first base this year. What did he do? He showed up to spring training without a first baseman's glove. He's just there to hang out and have a good time, which is a problem for the Red Sox because they're depending on him to actually work hard and play well at first. Team development is a key part of creating cohesion within groups. As the quote states, if you want to go faster, go alone. If you want to go farther, go together. In other words, groups and teams are crucial in furthering objectives and getting beyond what you normally could achieve.